Welcome back to the Cyber Resilience Brief, the Safe Breach podcast, dedicated to transforming threat intelligence into actionable defense. I'm your host, Tova Dvorin, and joining me, as always, is Adrian Culley, our resident offensive cybersecurity engineer and genuinely interesting human being. Adrian, today we're tackling a group that has redefined audacity in cybercrime, the COM, and its highly prolific offshoots, Scattered Spider, ShinyHunters, Lapsus, and Scattered Shiny Lapsus. Try saying that 3 times fast.
Yeah, easy for you to say, Tova. Thank you for the introduction. This is a crucial topic. The COM isn't just a threat actor, it's an entire ecosystem. Again, we've been chatting recently about the supply chain of attacks. This is a decentralized network that has weaponized social engineering to a degree we haven't seen before. They have fundamentally shattered the perimeter, not through a zero-day exploit, but through a 10-minute phone call.
Let's set the stage. What is the COM, and how did it evolve into the multi-million-dollar criminal enterprise we track today? And how did they do it through phone calls? No one talks on the phone anymore.
So it's a paradigm shift. The COM, short for the community, is a fluid international collective. Apparently, mostly young English speaking individuals. Crucially, they're not motivated by politics or ideology like Anonymous. Their drivers are purely money and ego, hence the dollar on the Lapsus name. They thrive on notoriety, loudly bragging about their exploits on platforms like Telegram, which constantly pushes members towards more brazen, high-profile attacks to achieve heroic status.
Okay, and here I thought that the dollar sign was to rip off Kesha, but classic drivers, and it makes them more ruthless. Toxic culture is the engine, but what was the first iteration of their public-facing threat?
So that was Lapsus dollar in 2021 and 2022. Again, reminder for people who didn't hear our Shiny Hunters episode, Lapsus is the Latin word for breach or mistake, and the dollar implies it's financially motivated. They were a proof of concept demonstrating how devastating pure social engineering could be against giants like Microsoft, Nvidia, and Okta, stealing massive amounts of source code. However, their monetization was erratic. Lapsus often focused more on chaos and notoriety.
Okay, but 2022 was a long time ago. How have they developed from a professional standpoint, and what's their threat level?
So, if we look at Scattered Spider, also tracked as UNC 3944 or Octo Tempest, they took the Lapsus playbook and professionalized it, moving from chaotic data theft to financially devastating ransomware campaigns. Their genius was forming a potent alliance with established ransomware as a service syndicates, specifically Black Cat RAS. Black Cat Ransomware as a Service is directly associated with the Russian FSB intelligence service, the Russian Federal Security Service, the replacement for the KGB. It is a direct example of a hostile nation state, Russia, using their intelligence service to provide, via proxy, hacking knowledge, skills, and expertise to Western third-party useful fools, whether witting or unwitting. There is also considerable current research underway as to what the footprint of Russian intelligence officers embedded within the COM is.
So, what you're saying is that the Russian intelligence services may be using the gullible young to do their dirty work against the gullible West.
Absolutely, and they're certainly not disconnected. Scattered Spider solves the critical national access problem using their native English skills and mastery of social engineering. The question to ask is who's giving them tuition in this? In return, the ransomware as a service partners provide the robust, scalable infrastructure needed for encryption, negotiation, and payment processing. The convergence makes them incredibly efficient and profitable, and the Russian Federal Security Service gets their disruption. Scattered Spiders and the COM get their notoriety.
And they also get their financial payouts. The impacts have been staggering and in the billions.
They have. The Las Vegas casino hacks in September 2023 were a watershed moment. They used a sophisticated operation against MGM Resorts, which began with a single simple vishing call to the help desk. The resulting 10-day operational shutdown cost MGM over $100 million in losses, far exceeding any direct ransomware payment. It's small beer compared to the Jaguar Land Rover losses in the UK, but this is still a catastrophic consequence of bypassing the identity perimeter.
Also, the catastrophic consequence of taking a phone call. So, if you're like me and avoid phone calls, you are staying safe. But let's pivot to the technical details, Adrian. As an offensive cybersecurity engineer, what is the single most effective TTP they employ, in your opinion?
Without a doubt, it's their mastery of voice phishing or vishing. Their core target is not the firewall, it's the corporate body. It's corporate IT help desk in specific. They understand the help desk is a procedural weak point designed to be helpful. They use multi-layered reconnaissance, gathering publicly identifiable information from LinkedIn, calling once to map out password reset processes, then calling back to convincingly impersonate the employee.
Right. And this is the somewhat low tech, somewhat high tech way of getting past multi factor authentication MFA, which is supposed to be the ultimate safety net.
Exactly, that's correct, Tova. The ultimate goal is to manipulate staff into reprovisioning the employee's multi-factor authentication device to an attacker-controlled device, or simply resetting the password will do. When vishing fails, they resort to automation. We see two primary techniques. Firstly, multi-factor authentication fatigue or push bombing. They flood the target's phone with push approval requests until the user, out of annoyance or confusion, simply approves one to make the notification stop. Secondly, SIM swapping, where they social engineer the mobile carrier to port the victim's number to their SIM card, instantly intercepting all incoming SMS codes and multi-factor authentication tokens. This, combined with highly targeted phishing mimicking of Okta SSO portals, gives them the keys to the kingdom.
So, after all of that, once they do gain access, how are they able to move and operate without triggering alarms? Now, granted, this is table stakes for most hacking groups, but what is their signature move here?
So, first and foremost, they're masters of living off the land. They avoid custom malware in favor of legitimate built-in administrative tools like Microsoft Remote Desktop Protocol (RDP), or installing stealthy legitimate remote access software. This allows them to blend with normal network activity and pivot quickly, escalating privileges in platforms like Okta and Azure Active Directory. We've even seen them leverage this to move to VMware's vSphere hypervisor environment to deploy Dragonforce ransomware directly.
Wow. Wow. And then from there, they have their specialized double extortion model.
Yes. They collect massive amounts of sensitive data. We're talking 6 terabytes in some cases, and exfiltrate it to widely used high capacity cloud services. Think Mega.nz and Amazon S3 buckets. This is extremely difficult to detect because those services are often listed to allow legitimate business use.
Which raises more questions in my mind about what Amazon should be doing from their side to be able to detect this code, but that's subject for another episode. What about IOCs, indicators of compromise?
So the group uses highly ephemeral IOCs. The phishing domains they use are often active for less than 7 days. If you are relying on a purely reactive security posture, blocklisting known IPs or domains, you're already too late. They also specialize in what the security services refer to as drive-by dead boxes. They will use comments on public forums that are, again, highly ephemeral. They put a comment on somebody else's Instagram page or Facebook that's there for literally minutes until it's used. Then it's removed. Very, very difficult to track and trace, even for 3 and 4 letter agencies.
Wow, okay. So, given that traditional IOCs fail and their primary exploit is the human element, like we talked about with ShinyHunters, how must our security validation, specifically breach and attack simulation (BAS) and adversarial exposure validation (AEV), change to match the threat?
So we have to shift from testing code to testing policy and procedure. BAS and AAV must relentlessly focus on validating the human element, if you like, the human firewall.
And what does the human firewall validation look like in practice?
It means emulating the full kill chain. First, BAS needs to simulate the reconnaissance phase, testing whether employees overshare PII online that an attacker could use to build a convincing persona. Secondly, we must run high fidelity simulations of the vishing calls. Our AEV must confirm that the help desk is uncompromisable. Are they enforcing policies like vocal password or two-employee approval for privileged account resets, even when the supposed caller provides all the PII they should know?
So you could almost call that human multi-factor authentication, am I right?
Absolutely. No benefit of the doubt should be given. When it comes to validating security controls, whether technically or over the phone or over email, over some other media, there must be multi-factor authentication. And we also need to validate resilience against multi-factor authentication fatigue. BAS must continuously push bomb our current MFA solution to measure the mean time to detect and block the attack before a frustrated user approves the request. Finally, AEV must continuously test our IAM posture, ensuring that we detect and immediately flag actions like a compromised admin creating malicious cloud instances or forging SAML tokens for persistence.
And this brings us to continuous automated red teaming, or CART, which addresses the post-exploitation phase, right? What happens after the breach. How does CART counter their stealthy living off the land approach?
Because they use legitimate tools like RDP, our defense can't just block binaries. It has to detect the abuse of those tools. Behavior is another way of saying that. CART must continuously and automatically emulate these behaviors. We need to run scenarios that execute RDP for lateral movement by a low privilege account or the creation of persistent mechanisms like scheduled tasks, MITRE attack technique T1053. The validation goal is to confirm that our EDR and SIEM platforms can identify the malicious sequence of actions, even if each individual tool use is actually benign.
Okay, and what about data exfiltration?
We use CART to specifically simulate high volume transfers of sensitive data to endpoints like Mega.nz or Amazon S3. Again, MITRE technique 1567. Since we can't block all cloud traffic, CART must confirm that our data loss prevention and network egress monitoring are effective at generating high fidelity alerts only when sensitive assets are involved. Crucially, CART must also test our automated take-back actions, validating that we can instantly revoke all active sessions for a compromised identity upon detection. Again, our hobby horse, validate but verify.
Right. Validate, but verify, and keep on carding.
As the single most impactful defensive step an organization can take against the COM is to neutralize their core advantage, their ability to bypass multi-factor authentication.
And that means moving beyond SMS or push notifications. That's being able to meet them where their advanced techniques lay.
Precisely, that the highest leverage defense is the immediate implementation of phishing-resistant MFA based on FIDO2 or WebAuthn standards. Cryptographically bound keys cannot be intercepted via phishing, harvested by phishing pages, or compromised by SIM swapping. They eliminate the attacker's preliminary initial access technique.
And beyond FIDO2, what immediate steps should be taken to fortify the vulnerable IT help desk?
We must harden it as a security perimeter. First, eliminate the target by moving routine password resets to secure self-service workflows backed by strong MFA. This removes the opportunity for human manipulation. Second, for high-risk requests that must go through the help desk, enforce strict verification, such as a mandatory callback to a pre-registered number or a vocal password. Finally, organizations must enforce the principle of least privilege and segment their privileged access management systems, preventing an initial foothold from escalating into pervasive administrative control. Whilst we're on this topic, it's also now, sadly, but easily achieved, very good practice for friends and family that you agree a safe word with each other. And if anybody ever rings you telling you that a friend or relative is in trouble and needs you to reset their credentials, you say to them, "What's the family safe word?" They will not know. 2 minutes effort to agree a obscure word between the friends and family, and you instantly defeat this hacking technique.
A brilliant technique and so easy to implement in real life. Thank you, Adrian. The COM really is a community of hackers that is redefining the way that businesses are being attacked, that it's redefining the way that we view and use our cloud systems and the way that we view and trust or don't trust technology. So thank you, Adrian, for providing this comprehensive strategy that ends up matching the comprehensive threat. Hopefully, in this podcast and with more steps like this, we're building up our own community of cyber resilience.
My pleasure as always, Tova. This group, the COM, reminds us that sometimes the simplest attack vectors are the most devastating. And if any of you are Monty Python fans, the Holy Grail, think of them as an anarcho-syndicalist collective. The only response you have to this anarcho-syndicalist collective that's the COM is continuous validation to prove where you're resilient and to improve where you're not.
And don't worry, they will shout that they're being repressed and we don't care. Anyway, that's it for this edition of the Cyber Resilience Brief. Thank you so much for being a lovely audience. Join us next time as we continue to help you build defenses of tomorrow. And in the meantime, stay safe with SafeBreach. The Cyber Resilience Brief is a SafeBreach podcast, executive produced by Tova Dvorin and Adrian Culley. Sound provided by Adobe Music. Editing done with Adobe Podcasts. Distribution and tracking provided by Podbean. If you enjoy the podcast and would like to learn more, please check us out at www.safebreach.com. SAFEBREACH.com. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.